and but it is still our belief that we can reach a conclusion of the talks by the deadline. Go ahead, Matt.
Does your unwillingness to even characterize the where the talks are, and that they're in a difficult phase with 2.5 weeks left, does that extend to not commenting on the various reports that have come out this week and last about concessions that the P5+1 appear to be making to Iran in terms of both sanctions relief and on the PMD issue?
Well, I think we spoke a bit to this yesterday, but on the PMD issue, we've seen reports that I think that you're referring to. I think our position on this hasn't changed. We've always made clear to the Iranians that they will have to reach agreement with the IAEA on providing the necessary access to address the concerns about the possible military dimensions of their program. And without that agreement, we will not be able to move forward with sanctions relief. That's been our position throughout these negotiations.
Right, but that means that suggests that the actual questions don't have to be answered and the concerns resolved in order to get the deal. Correct?
Well, again,
they only have to agree to, at some point, whatever that might be, but at some point after an agreement is reached to deal with this. Is that correct?
Well, the point is that Iran has to provide the necessary access to the IAEA for them to address these concerns.
Yeah, but does that have to happen to get to a deal, or can that happen after a deal?
Well, without agreement on the access, we will not, and needed to resolve this, we won't be able to reach.
So if Iran agrees to give access to the sites that the IAEA wants, but hasn't actually given the access by June 30th, that's still okay.
Well,
is that correct?
There I think we're getting into details that I will leave in the negotiating room. I think what I'm trying to convey, though, is that our position on the possible military dimensions issue and the necessity of Iran working with the IAEA, that position remains the same. It hasn't changed.
Is it correct that there is a difference between me, if I'm Iran, saying to you, okay, you can have access in 50 years, and me as Iran saying, okay, come on in now and give and ask all the questions you want, and we'll address your concerns. There's a difference between those two, correct?
But the distinction you're trying to say is 50 years versus
well,
zero?
I mean, when does Iran have to give the access?
Well, again, those are details that
well, they shouldn't be. They shouldn't.
In the negotiating room, and I'm not going to speak to those.
Well, but they shouldn't be up for negotiation, because the whole idea in the JPOA was that Iran would resolve these issues in order to get to the JPOA, in order to get to a comprehensive deal. And now you're saying they don't have to resolve them at all. All they have to do is say, okay, at some point in the future, and we don't know when that might be, that we'll give access. No, and giving access doesn't mean that the IAEA or your concerns have been resolved or addressed.
Our position on this hasn't changed, Matt, and you can go back and look at what we've said at the time. But our position remains that it's about the access that the IAEA needs to address our concerns. And
but that's not what it was at the beginning. At the beginning of this, it was they have to resolve the PMD issue to the satisfaction of the IAEA, or there isn't going to be a deal.
Again, I'm saying there's not a
well, that's a big difference between that and saying that they just have to agree to, at some point down the road, give access and not even resolve the concerns.
Again,
there is a difference between there. I mean, well, am I wrong?
Look, the focus is on addressing these concerns, and that's one of the issues that we're dealing with in the negotiating room.
So would the IAEA first have to resolve this? Well, would the deal have to include that the IAEA has resolved this already before you sign it? I mean, because if you sign the deal, without that being resolved, isn't just something left open?
Again, I go back to what I said initially in response to Matt's question. That it has consistently been our position that Iran has to reach agreement with the IAEA to provide the necessary access to address the concerns about the possible military dimensions of their program. That's been our position throughout the negotiations, and without that agreement, we'll not be able to move forward with sanctions relief. And the discussions in the room, I'll leave in the room, but that's been our position, and it remains.
So it has never been the U.S. position that Iran must resolve the PMD concerns to get to an agreement. That's never been a condition.
Look, if we want to go back and look at what was said at the time, again, our position on this.
I wish this wasn't. I mean,
remains the
I
same.
mean, it doesn't remain the same, Jeff. It's changed. I mean, Secretary Kerry even said that they had to be resolved in order for there to be a deal.
You're trying to draw a distinction between the words address and resolve. And
No, you're lowering it. You're lowering the bar even further from address to just agree to give access to, which means, I mean, if they give
No, I've said the
access,
word address, Matt.
if they give access, and the IAEA, your version now says that if they give access, the IAEA goes in and finds some huge secret bomb making thing. That's okay. They've given access,
Matt,
and it's all right.
I think you were listening to what I said, but
I
I said
was.
that Iran has to provide the necessary access to address the concerns about the possible military dimensions.
But what if the
of their
concerns
program.
aren't addressed? What if the access that they give doesn't address the concerns? You've already got the deal. They're already getting sanctions relief. Or are you saying that if the concerns aren't addressed at some point down the road, then they're not going to get the sanctions relief that they would have gotten for that?
I've laid out our position clearly, Matt. It hasn't changed.
All right. Well, I'm very confused because it does seem that the goalposts seem to be moving.
No, the goalposts haven't moved.
All right.